Well, I see we got 50 people in the room, and it's a few minutes early, but you know how these things go. So let's get this show on the road. I see a lot of the usual folks are here. I appreciate that. My regulars, Dixie Champagne, of course. I saw JP in the mix. Mark Sparks, Scuba Stevie, 62, Scotty Beam, Ram 50 V8, Galen Urso, Graham Mills, Tri-Fingers. Wasn't there a Mordecai Three Fingers Johnson that wanted to play on the Springfield softball team until they had to explain that Mr. Burns died about 100 years ago? I could be wrong on that. Ian Halujak, yep. Peter Mandix, 46 in Lone Tree, and first time this season, the seat heater was turned on. Well, I got to tell you, I titled today's episode about the last fling of summer because I turned my AC back on yesterday. And it's supposed to be rainy in the 50s all this week, but we got 75 right now. But it was warm yesterday. And for those of you who accompanied me on my Viper trip, I appreciate that very much. Wednesday, I drove up to Harbor Springs, which is up here, and did the Tunnel of Trees, and nearly lost a camera at the Devil's Elbow, which I shot another video about, which I put up yesterday. So there's the 4-minute condensed highlight version, and there's the hour-long video. You can watch either one of those for those of you who like my Viper Drive videos. So Bob Blah Blah says, it's the innocent bysitter. Hello, sir. Yeah, I'm an innocent bystander, although I am, in fact, sitting also. So, and Mike Tove points out that it's the time of the year when you may need the heat overnight, AC in the day, and that'll do it. JP says the AC's been off for 2 weeks there in South Carolina. Should be good for the rest of the fall, hopefully. And, of course, Jared1701 has to point out that it's 91F in Ocala, Florida. 91F. Joe Mercado checking in from San Diego. Thank you very much, my friend. I appreciate that. 61 in Portsmouth, England from Aldebaranti. 61 in Portsmouth. And Bournemouth. How do you pronounce that one? Bournemouth. That's what the cool tank museum is. But I always mispronounce it. People explain to me how to pronounce it, and I always forget. So, Mike Toth says, of course, the camera was what took the last fling. Yeah, the camera jumped off my Viper and did a really, really cool spin through the air and got some great footage before it hit the ground. Ian Halujek says, hey, Steve, if I may send you a pic of my Jeep decorated for Halloween, can it be shown during a live stream? Well, I don't have the technology to put something up on the screen here other than on my phone. So if you were to email it to me right now, steve@latoslaw.com, and send a nice high-resolution photograph, if you got one, I might be able to load it right now and put it up. Otherwise, I'd have to wait till another day. Donald Whittemore says 91 in Vegas, baby. And Troy is checking from Anderson, South Carolina. I love the Carolinas. I've been to both South and North. I love them both very, very much. Dixie Champagne says it's cool enough in the Macon Metro for open windows and no AC. Yeah, it probably would have been okay for me last night to open the windows and not turn the AC on. But I'm always worried about weird things happening overnight. A storm will come by and blow rain sideways into the house. It happens. So Chevy Mustang says, I got about a half a dozen recommendations for the tree ride after watching your video. Okay. Yeah. No one understands how YouTube does anything or why, but just they'll notify you when they feel like it. Fred Stewart liked the beautiful country in the Viper ride. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I had to do what I do on my amateurish skill set and low budget. And I shot the whole thing in real time in one day. I drove from southeastern Michigan up to Harbor Springs, put the cameras in the car, went for a drive, took the cameras off the car, and came home in one day. And so if I really wanted to, like if I was doing a TV show or something, I could actually bring a film crew and set stuff up and, and it'd be much more professional. And I could have done that, but, some of it came out really, really nice. But obviously over the course of an hour and a half, at one point clouds rolled by and the light changed. So, for what it was, I thought it came up pretty well. Idris Taylor says the Tank Museum's in Bovington, Dorset. Yes, Bovington is near Bournemouth. And I know that because I took the train from London to there, then rented a car and drove to Bovington. And that's where you go see the Tank Museum. If you're a World War II guy and you live a very, very good life, when you die, you go to the Tank Museum. It's one of the coolest places on earth. And I'm a World War II guy. I love studying World War II. And if you want to see each and every tank, look it up because they've got one there at the Tank Museum. 2000 MCR, my RV is broken again. Is not that the natural state of affairs with a RV these days? Mr. R says, I'm now in Florida, formerly in Illinois and South Carolina. Yeah, you know, it's funny because I know people who have only lived in one part of the country and never lived anywhere else. And I mean, I know people who were born and raised and lived their entire life in like a 10-mile radius. I mean, that happens. You know, it used to happen a lot more, but nowadays, no, not so much. But I lived a couple of years in a couple of different places. I've always returned to Michigan. I consider Michigan my home. And I had somebody ask me the other day, they said, Steve, have you ever considered moving, like, and name some other places? And I said, I've thought about it as a place to visit, but I wouldn't want to necessarily live there because I like living in Michigan. Margaret Chase enjoyed the Viper video as well. Viper video, that's a lovely part of Michigan. It is. The whole area up here, the Traverse City, Petoskey, Charlevoix area is absolutely gorgeous. Harbor Springs is beautiful as well. I've got friends up there as well. Idris Taylor says Bovington. Now, I understand Bovington, but is it Bournemouth is what Graham Mills is saying. So Bourne, like Jason Bourne, Bournemouth, and Bovington. Okay. Canadian Robot Lady says hello. Thank you for checking in. She actually says howdy. Ian now says, whenever you get a chance, Steve, the email's been sent. Well, I will check my email. And there we go. Uh-oh. Hang on. I'm trying to open a picture here. This is customer service. You ask if you can show me a picture. I say, feel free to do that. Then you send it to me. And, well, I guess I get it better this way. There is the tank all made up for Halloween. How's that for you? So, D. McGee says it's Bovington. Bovington. See? I can't get anyone to agree with me on this. Oh, boy. Mindbend. Hello, Steve Leitch. Hello, Mindbend. Ian Haluzek. Thanks, dude. You are welcome, my friend. Ron Howell, is Wicked Sister a good book? I have it here because I believe it is. It's written by a good friend of mine, Karen Dion. I will come right up and tell you that. So don't think that I just grabbed a book at random and loved it. But I read it because I know her. I've read previous books by her, but I enjoyed it very, very much. And if you are into thrillers, it's getting rave reviews. And so this is a copy of The Wicked Sister that she signed for me. And I appreciated that very much. And I'm also mentioning the acknowledgments because I gave her some tips on some issues that arose in the book. But I highly recommend it, especially if you're into thrillers. So it is very, very well reviewed. It's not just me. Other people like it as well. Matthias F. Lou, many greetings from Berlin. Many greetings from America, my friend. And it's good that you say Berlin, Germany, because there are some towns called Berlin in America. In fact, I believe there's a new Berlin in Wisconsin, isn't there? So Daniel Kester claims that the Canadian Robot Lady didn't say howdy. She typed it or wrote it. But I imagine her saying it as she types it. Mike Rickles and howdy from Gogebic County. And that's another one that causes some controversy because some people say Gogebic, some people say Gogebic. And that is in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. I will accept either as correct. Of course, I don't live there. So Dennis Berman says Wicked Sister is, in fact, a good book. Thank you very much. I'm glad you liked it. Douglas Brown, I used to say howdy when I lived in Utah. And now I'm in Arkansas, and I say hey. Hey. By the way, the Finns say hey, and they spell it H-E-I, and that's their way of saying hi. They don't say hi, they say hey. So if you meet a Finn and they say hey, that's their way of saying hi. G Keyman 565 says hello to Steve and the rest from the thumb. From the thumb of Michigan. ZKR99, do you pronounce the G in poignant? No, you don't. But you do roll the N as if there's one of those tildes over it. Is that what it's called, a tilde? Poignant, as opposed to poignant. Poignant. The G kind of indicates that you get into it that way. It's like you're downshifting. Sub GR77 says he's checking in from Davison, Michigan. And Davison is right up the road from Atlas, Michigan. Tiger Stripes, hey, Steve. Hail chat. Thank you. And Canadian Robot Lady says, I like hey there, too, which is an acceptable thing. By the way, I have to tell you, Canadian Robot Lady is, of course, from Canada. Hence the name and the maple leaf that she's got in her icon. But we always talk about funny place names. And of course, Medicine Hat is a town in Canada, which I've always been fascinated by that name. I did a story today about a man from Medicine Hat. Apparently, the people from Medicine Hat call themselves Hatters. He's a Hatter from Medicine Hat. G Keyman 565, Thumb, Michigan, Mayville. I know where that is. Mayville, Michigan, up in the thumb. Michigan, of course, is shaped like this. This is the thumb of Michigan, up here. And LD Baranti says, is it Michigan or is it Michigan? And by Michigan, he says like MCH. Is it Michigan? No, it's Michigan. It's a French pronunciation. I believe the spelling goes back there to those days. So, Matthias says there's a town named Berlin in Oregon, Nevada, and Ohio. I think there's one in Texas. And I think there's a New Berlin in Wisconsin. Again, I could be wrong. And Canadian Robot Lady says, yes, they are Mad Hatters. There you go. 2000 MCR, no update on Crazy Town yet. Sorry. Don't worry. I haven't forgotten. Tiger Stripes. I'd love to be a Hatter from Medicine Hat. Okay. So, haven't had too many people checking in on the $100 bill, although I realize now it's pretty obvious. So maybe you guys have spotted it and just decided not to mention it. $108 GK. Thanks to Harbor Springs tour. Yeah. Getting sloppy here. The Tunnel of Trees in Michigan, the well-known M119 Tunnel of Trees, follows the shoreline of the edge of Michigan along Lake Michigan between Harbor Springs and Cross Village. And technically speaking, M119 does go outside of Harbor Springs down to Petoskey, but no one ever considers that part of the Tunnel of Trees so much. But it's a beautiful part of the state, absolutely beautiful part of the state. So, Ian Haluzjak admires the taste in Gatorade, although today's just fruit punch. I buy these things by the by the pallet. Daniel Kester watched the whole Tunnel of Trees video. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I can tell you right now. Oh, and Mark Sparks goes, what happened to the little town with the flooded Fieros? The town's been rebuilt, although the flooded Fieros, I believe, are all gone. But the town of Sanford, Michigan, got wiped out when a dam burst a couple months ago. And very, very sad story, but there was a Fiero museum, and a guy had a whole bunch of Fieros and rare Fieros and stuff. And I did a walk-around video earlier that I had not put up, but I put it up after that because I thought, well, I've got it. I may as well put it up. But the town's rebuilt, but the dam is gone. Therefore, the impoundment behind the dam is also gone. And instead of being a lake, it's now basically a river. And all these people who've got lakefront property have just mudfront property, and it's a catastrophe for them. And so it's unclear what's going to happen if they ever rebuild the dam or what's going to go on. So as of right now, the town is recovered, but the dam's not been replaced and the water's not been impounded. So that's what's going on there. But Daniel Kester says, hey, I watched the whole video. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And some people, I had a couple people go, hey, this is boring. This is boring. Well, here's the deal. The drive from one end to the other is about a half hour. So if you drive up and back, it's an hour. So you've got three choices. I could just turn the sound off and you could watch a camera doing this through a tunnel of trees. To me, that's boring. I watched some other videos to see what other people have done, and some people put music to it. Well, if you don't like the music, to me, it gets stupid. So what I do when I'm driving, if I got someone in the car with me and have a conversation, we talk. What a novel idea. So what I like to do in these videos is I talk to the camera as if I'm talking to you guys. So if you don't enjoy me talking, don't watch the video. But then again, you're probably not watching any of my videos anyways. So I figured, you know something? I'll just talk. I tell some stories, things that pop into my mind. So, if you want, you can turn your sound off and play your own music, I guess. But what are you going to do? D Wood, Sanford Lake is still sad looking. Yeah, it is. And it's not really a lake. Like I said, it's more of a river. So, and Fred Stewart reminds us the squirrel did try to warn you. And it didn't come out on camera as well as I'd have liked. But I was driving south and I came around a curve and there's a squirrel sitting in the middle of the road. And he was working on an acorn, just like Scrat in Ice Age. And he looked at me and he clearly he was there first. And I came to an almost complete stop. Then finally, and he jumped off the road. And if I had not slowed down, that squirrel would be gone. Absolutely gone. So, I appreciate it. I do break for animals if I have the chance. I'm not going to do anything crazy. But I did earlier that day see some wild turkeys. And those guys, they stand about this tall. I'm down to the ground. And now, if you hit one just right, it might not cause much damage to your vehicle. But I've heard of those things causing massive damage to radiators and windshields. So you would not want to hit one of those, and it wouldn't be pretty. So that was the only thing I saw. Other than the squirrels, I did see. Mark Heil, morning, Steve. Good morning, Mark. Thank you for checking in from the West Coast. Thank you very much. And I have to remind people that Mark, of course, on the West Coast, know all about KROQ Los Angeles, which was the greatest radio station on earth until this summer, when they changed their format to something else. They no longer are what they used to be. Mindbend, can you go live on one of the trips? You still talk at every stop sign, you glance and answer a question or two. I don't have the equipment for it. And that's the problem. To do a live stream requires you to run your camera into something. Now, you could do a live stream with a phone, but the problem is that it would be horrible quality, and the phone would, so somewhere down the road, I might look into getting the equipment. I've done a couple equivalent of live streams at car shows with a friend of mine who's a technical guy, and he's got all the equipment, including one of those heavy-duty hotspot things that you can run into as if it acts like almost like a cable. I mean, it's got that much power to it. And if I had one of those, I would consider doing it, but I'd also probably need someone else to hold the camera and that kind of thing. So somewhere down the road. FDSS says, I can help you go live. Dude, I appreciate that. And I apologize. Every time you mention that, I'm like, you emailed me a dozen times, offered me help. And it's just the timing has never worked out that well. So I do need to speak to you and a couple other tech people about some issues I'm having. But the primary issue that I have is I like this camera. And get this camera to work, I've got to run it into a thing called a web presenter. I've got to run the web presenter into a computer, and the computer then it's got to run the internet. And I could do some of that in a mobile setting, but it'd be a little more difficult, especially in a car that's only got 2 seats. Because I can tell you that on the drive, on the seat next to me, it was this deep in stuff. And that's after I had all the cameras mounted. So I've got camera equipment and audio equipment and stuff that I had to unpack. And the Viper's got no storage space. So it's all on the seat, So somewhere down the road, I'll look into that. But Ian Haluzak, hey, Steve, I'm planning on doing a road trip. If I pop through Michigan, can we meet up for a cup of coffee? Absolutely. And I'll throw that out here. I'm in southeastern Michigan. My office is in Southfield, and I've told people before, if you're going to be in the area and I'm around and it's a reasonable time, if you say, hey, I'm going to be driving through at 3 a.m. on a Saturday, I'm probably busy. But if I got a heads up and you're going to be around, we can drop by. Yeah, sure, why not? Although I don't drink coffee, but we'll figure something out. Lester Blade points out that KROQ Bean left and Kevin couldn't keep it going. Well, yeah, and Kevin got fired. Bean left, Kevin got fired or laid off, and they basically came in and said, dude, we're letting you go because we're changing formats. And they let him come on for one day and basically say his goodbyes. But it was kind of unexpected. But, the biggest problem with KROQ is they had been this fixture for decades of playing new music. And they played a lot of different music. And the Los Angeles radio market is so large that they've got a bunch of stations playing any kind of music you want. So I don't know about country. They probably do have a country station, but you want classic rock, they got classic rock. You want top 40, they got top 40. You want urban, they got urban. And so KROQ is always managing to be different. And I don't know if their ratings were too low, but they have those ratings that come out. But they've got corporate owners, and corporate owners don't care about the history of something as much as they care about the bottom line right now. So Ian Halujek, I'll email you details once planned. Go right ahead. Steve@latoslaw.com. JP says they bribe you a Diet Coke. Hey, JP showed up at the Woodward Dream Cruise, went for a walk, and came back with a Gatorade for himself. Don't think I didn't notice that, my friend. FDSS, how far are you from Kalamazoo? A couple hours. Kalamazoo is going across the bottom of 94 there. Kalamazoo, of course, one of those town names we just love to say. It's like Escanaba. Douglas Brown, you're running out of shelf space. That's an understatement. Although, I just realized I can do this. Hang on. This show is about to get very, very meta, as we say. So I've mentioned before that I'm going to rearrange some stuff behind me. But I also am rearranging some stuff back there. So I just now, like 2 days ago, put a photograph up on the wall behind my camera. I don't know if you can see that or not. But you'll see that behind the camera, there's 2 units filled with T-shirts. And then above that is a photograph that I took of the Houghton Hancock Bridge one night. It's lighter because it's a time exposure. But I've had that framed. I had it on my office wall for the longest time. And I needed to put a picture that fit in that spot perfectly. And it's got to be a picture I don't mind looking at constantly. And that's what I've always enjoyed. So I'm going to start putting some stuff up. I figured out a couple of things I can do. I'm moving stuff around. It's very slow. It's glacially paced. It happens at the speed of glaciers, but it will happen. Mike Rickelson, what is the ESPN documentary on the winged cars? You want to look up, it's called Bonneville 71. Bonneville 71. It was put together with the help of NASCAR and ESPN. I believe it is on YouTube. Bonneville, like the car, but the Bonneville Salt Flats, and the number 71, because the 71 is an homage to Bobby Isaac's car. The story is actually about Bobby Isaac and his car, but it talks about the wing cars and so on. I'm actually in it, so that would be it. Matthew Shostrom says he'd bring a Powerade instead of a Gatorade. Hey, it's all Kool-Aid. Who cares? Tiger Stripe says you could always go up with the shelves. So many YouTubers have a wall of shelves behind them. The thing is that I like having this space here for these tall objects. This microphone in particular is very, very tall. And if I had a shelf there and it went up over that, number one, it'd be harder to light it. But I'm going to attach a couple things. I think I'm going to attach the swords to the wall over here because the swords are there, but you can't see them as well. And then I'm going to play around with the license plates. They might go across the top up here, for instance, or over here a little bit. It's kind of hard to do, but I'll figure it out. Tiger Straps, clothing racks. Yeah, I've got 2 rolling clothing racks back there that have T-shirts on them. And I've counted before, although I thinned some more out the other day, but I've got a couple hundred T-shirts. So Scuba Stevie 60 says Gatorade is the enemy of diabetics. Oh, I'm sure it is. This stuff has got to be like pure sugar. I'm sure it is. By the way, for those of you who watched the video where I was in my Viper, I did eat 2 chocolate chip cookies. And then shortly thereafter, I ate the box of the red cherry sour balls. Just in time to go stop and go into the pastry shop in Harbor Springs and get a donut with butter toasted. So the sugar and the carbohydrates were just off the charts. I had a buzz going I could hear the vibration in my head all the way home, and it wasn't the car. So, old guy, has your caseload increased since starting your channel? A little bit, but the main thing it's done is it's caused me to get more phone calls from around the country. I do get phone calls now from all over the place. And I get phone calls a lot from Texas, and apparently there's not many attorneys in Texas doing what I do. And I get people calling me and say, Steve, I need someone like you, but in Texas. I'm like, sorry, I don't know anybody. So Matthew Shostrom says that the syrup shots were probably worse than the sugar high. That was, and I'll tell you, primarily, did I say donut? I meant bagel. It's a bagel. Sorry, Tiger Stripes. When I was guzzling the syrup, the maple syrup on camera, I had an empty stomach. That was the worst. Oh my God. I went woo and then woo. I mean, I almost got sick, like physically ill, because I drank the equivalent of like a big glass of maple syrup on an empty stomach, and it messed me up bad. But yeah, I stopped at the pastry shop and got a bagel that was toasted, which makes a little more sense. Mark Heil, did you vacuum up the cookie crumbs? Well, number one, I didn't get any in the car. But number two, yeah, I do go through the Viper periodically and detail every last grain of dust out of it. So I also don't drive it that often. Probably about once a week these days, and it's going to get put away pretty soon. As soon as it gets a little colder, I'll probably have to put it away for the fall and winter. Greg Mackin says his insurance company wants to total a vehicle instead of repair it. The car can be fixed for hundreds, they said. I can fix, but they won't pay. Well, wait, if they total a vehicle, though, ask them to let you keep it, because sometimes they'll let you do that. Of course, then you got a totaled vehicle. I don't know. That's a weird one. That's a weird one. Because it would seem to me if the car can be fixed for hundreds, they'd be happy to pay it. Because isn't that less than if they total the car? Or is the car so blue book inexpensive that they figure it's not worth it? That's always the problem. Because I've had situations before where somebody has a car that runs really, really well, but it's old. As a result of that, it blue books for almost nothing. So Mike Ryan says, have you ever considered putting out a list of the cars that are most frequently lemons so people know what to avoid? That's actually an interesting thought, and I get asked that a lot, but it's actually not true, because most of the vehicles that I get lots of calls about are simply the cars that sold the most, and it is in proportion to sales. So, I mean, there's some obvious ones. Like, I would not buy a dual clutch transmission Ford for any amount of money. I just wouldn't do it. But generally speaking, the other vehicles, it's kind of like, it's a matter of math. It's, 1 out of 1,000 is bad. So the odds are 999 to 1 in your favor, but you just might get one of the bad ones. That's all. Mike Bend, what is the farthest call to you ever got? In my office? I get calls occasionally. I got a call today from Australia. And I felt bad because I knew who the guy was who called me. It's a guy who sent me one of my shirts. And he called, but I don't think he understood the time difference. Because I think he called at like 3 a.m. or something, my time. And so I missed the phone call because I'd love to have talked to him. But I think Australia is probably the farthest away. No one's ever called me from Antarctica yet. So, Don Jackson, do you think the state of Michigan will ban the sale of gas-powered cars? I suspect the state of Michigan will be the last one. The state of Michigan is so under the thumb of the car companies that, I mean, look, look at all the dumb laws the state of Michigan passed to keep Tesla from selling cars here. And then when they realized they're going to court and they're going to lose, they changed the rules to let Tesla. But now they're passing laws to keep other people out. It's like they know they're going to lose. They just don't care. So, Achilles' last stand must be a Daewoo. You know, it's kind of funny. I joke about the Daewoo Lanos, and I've had several people send me images of them from around the country that are for sale. I don't doubt that there's one or two out there, but my point was something more about the population of them and how dependable they are, and why a car built the same year as a Daewoo Lanos could be worse than the Daewoo Lanos when all of the Daewoo Lanoses, for the most part, are in junkyards. Most of them are. Song Yardbird, will you get in a canoe trip this fall? It's getting real tight. I might, and if I did, I would slap the cameras on and do some shots. But I haven't made plans yet. And like this weekend is out, next weekend is out, so it depends. Although I can often play hooky. Problem with the canoes, I got to get someone to play hooky with me because I need someone to sit in the front. I need a counterbalance. Peter Mandix, do you have a battery trickle charger for the Viper? I'm probably going to get one. I don't have one yet. I got to talk to my guys, though, because I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to do to put my Viper in storage. I have a heated garage to put it into, but, we'll see. So Ram 50 V8, once in a great while, I run across a Yugo still on the road. Yeah, at that point, it's just somebody who's obviously a hobbyist who's doing it because it's neat, So, Mindbend, you need a GoPro. I've got 5 GoPros or 6. I have GoPros that I use in my car, and I also use them on my canoe. Cool thing about GoPros is I've got stabilizers for them, handheld stabilizers, and I've got the mount on the front of my canoe where I can mount a GoPro with a stabilizer. So as the canoe is doing this, the image is staying horizontal, which is pretty cool. So, 90 knots, have you ever filed an amicus brief? No, I have not. Amicus briefs, generally speaking, are filed at the courts of appeal or the Supreme Courts, state or federal, U.S., and an amicus brief, it's a Latin term, amicus meaning a friend. And an amicus brief is where somebody comes along and says, hey, look, there's 2 parties have got an action before this court. And before the court rules, we'd like to explain why we have an interest in this and why we think you should rule in one way or the other. So it's not that uncommon at the Supreme Court level that many of the cases before them are of such great importance that there's all kinds of people on both sides who want to get involved and file amicus briefs. So as you can imagine, for instance, if a case were to get before the Supreme Court on an important constitutional issue and the court's going to rule and it's going to become the law of the land in all 50 states, you will get amicus briefs from all over the place. And they could be from organizations, nonprofit groups, universities, scholars. You'll occasionally get just a law professor who says, something, for those of us who study this field, we have something to add here. You ask the court for permission to file it, why you think it's important that they let you file it, and then you get the permission and you file it. And I know in law school, there was a couple occasions where I had the opportunity to go through it and read some of the amicus briefs. And some of them are helpful and some of them are probably just a waste of time. But I suspect that the bulk of them don't get read by anybody but the law clerks. So, ZKR99, do you fish from your canoe? I never have. So it's been a long, long time. Daniel Kester, where's Johnny Knoxville? It's been a while. Not heard from him here, but he's commented on videos during the week. I think he's just busy on the weekends. Rupeltaya. Steve needs a Mercedes-Benz, which is made in Finland. Does Mercedes-Benz build cars in Finland? I'm impressed. I know that I've got a good friend, Markku, who's from Finland, but now he works in America. And I asked him about the Finnish auto industry. And he says that for the most part, they don't have a lot of manufacturing there of automobiles. So I'm interested to know more about that. JP, I have a trickle charger on my BMW, but it's branded, plugs into the wall. I wrap the extension cord on the driver's side mirror so I won't drive off while still plugged in. Oh boy. Yeah, that's a good point. Now, the Viper, and I can illustrate with either model, but the Viper, this model is not anatomically correct, but the Viper's battery is actually back here. You pull this wheel off, and there's a battery access door inside the wheel well. I kid you not. But there's actually a battery terminal up here. So if you ever had to jump start your Viper, you'd pop the hood and you jump it from here, even though the battery's back here. So the battery's back here primarily for weight and also, I presume, to save some room up in the front. But to put a trickle charger on it, you'd put a trickle charger on it there. And it actually works to where you can put the trickle charger on it and run the cables out through this little vent there. There's a little vent on the side there. So I really need to dust my models off. But yeah, so trickle charger will just go in right there through that the gill there on the side. But when I put it away for the winter, it'll be put away for the winter. So Tiger Stripes, if it was me, I'd forget and yank off that mirror. I can tell you that when I lived in Bad Axe, Michigan, I was friends with a family that owned the drive-in movie theater. And they, how movie theaters work, drive-ins, they play a doubleheader, and they have movie 1, movie 2, and they replay movie 1 towards the end so that you can be there from sunset till 1 a.m. or something. And they would have the little speaker box that hung on your door. This is old school drive-in. And they would also play music between movies. And so they actually had me record a couple tapes of modern music because the tapes they had were old. So I would go into the recording studio at Bad Axe, WLEW, and just make them tapes. And they actually had me read the announcements between the songs, including, welcome to the Bad Axe Drive-In Movie Theater. Thank you for your patronage. Don't forget they got full service here and this, that, and everything. And then once per side, it also say, by the way, before you leave, be sure to put the speaker back on its stand. It doesn't just happen in the movies. Once in a while, somebody would fire the car up, back out, and rip out the window. So Carmel Olafson. Hi, Steve. Where is the best sandwich in Michigan? I would go with Zingerman's. Zingerman's Deli in Ann Arbor has very, very good sandwiches. They are world renowned if you like sandwiches. I also like the Plaza Deli on Northwestern Highway. That's one of the places where you walk up, you order your sandwich, and the guy yells out your order for some reason. So, but Zingerman's in Ann Arbor is renowned. Like when there's a nationally televised football game, that's one of the places they often send the announcers for their little, personal interest, non-sports stories on the side. Mike Bennett. What would happen if months after being added to the Supreme Court, the new justice experienced a radical conversion, such as becoming a Scientologist? I will normally not talk about politics, and I will not talk about what's going on right now with the Supreme Court. I will, however, answer the hypothetical question, because that is a good question. Because if you study the Constitution, that members of Congress, referring to the House of Representatives, are elected for 2 years. The president is elected for 4 years. And the Senate is elected for 6 years. 2-year term, 4-year term, 6-year term. And then federal judges, including the Supreme Court, are nominated. And once they're confirmed for life. For life. And so the makers of the Constitution, the people who drafted it, clearly wanted to have different types of overlaps in there so that you wouldn't get a weird situation where the government would flip-flop entirely ideologically. You wouldn't have these radical shifts from one to the other, and also the transitions will be more smooth. And it's kind of weird. I mean, I remember the first time I thought about it and realized, wait a second. The entire House of Representatives is up for re-election every 2 years. What a nightmare. I mean, you get elected, you're immediately running for re-election. You got a year and a half to the next election, right? But that's what it is. So the House turns over every 2 years, and the Senate has elections every 2 years, but only 1/3 of them are up for election. So the weird part is that having somebody who gets appointed and installed for life is there for life. And there have been occasions where someone was nominated to the Supreme Court. I'm talking about going back to our beginning of time, U.S. time, where someone was nominated who they thought, hey, this person, based on their life till now, is ideologically conservative or liberal or middle of the road or whatever. And life has a weird way of causing people to change their viewpoints over time. And so you run a risk of anybody you nominate to a federal judgeship who's going to be there for life is that, I'm 58 years old. My views have changed dramatically on some things from when I was 21. And I very well could live another 21 years, right? So just throwing numbers around here. When I'm that age, will I have the same views I have right now? And your views might not change as dramatically later in life as they would earlier, because earlier in life, you start out single, get married, have kids, and a lot of life-changing type of events happen, I think, around that time. But as you age, other things happen. So there have been occasions where they nominate somebody who go, this guy is a safe bet to be over here, and over time winds up over here. And it's interesting, but that's just what happens. And so short of becoming a totally incapacitated person, there's not much you can do to prevent that from happening. It could happen. It could happen. And that's part of the game. So there you go. Will Cooper says, I saw you in Davison the other day. In the Viper? Or how would you know? And if so, why didn't you wave? Hey, Mike Lackner just checked in. He's here. We can start now. Whew. Dude, you're late. I'm just kidding. Daniel Kester says that he wrote a letter to the president suggesting I be nominated. I've said before, I do not want to be a judge, and I would never want to be a judge. And if you said, Steve, no, you don't understand. The governor wants to appoint you. You will be appointed to the Court of Appeals in Michigan, Court of Appeals. And once you're on the Court of Appeals, it's a rubber stamp. You get reelected every time. You just do. It's the greatest job on earth. You hardly ever work. Clerks do all the work for you. You read a couple of briefs. You go, listen. No, don't want. I don't want it. I would not want to do that. It's no. However, I will admit, if I got appointed to the Supreme Court, I think I'd take that one, but only because that's a pretty big deal. It ain't going to happen, obviously, but that's one. So I appreciate the thought. Old guy, do you eat pasties? Michigan is known for pasties, at least in the UP. We've talked about pasties before because if you cross the Mackinac Bridge and hang left on US 2, go about 2 miles, you will encounter Lehto's pasties. No relation to me, but Lehto's is spelled the same way. It's the same name from Finland. And there's several pasty shops in the Upper Peninsula, very, very well-known. Muldoon's in Munising is very good also. There's Barb's Pasties in Clawson in the Lower Peninsula. There's also Lehto's Pasties, I believe, in Traverse City. But pasties are very, very good. The real debate here is whether you have a good pasty or not, whether you put butter on it, gravy on it, or ketchup on it. Because I am a butter person, and I'm in the minority now. I'm in the minority. A lot of Finns put gravy on it. A lot of American non-Finns put ketchup. But a pasty, for those of you who don't know, is a pastry, but yay big, that open it up, and it's got beef, potato, carrots, rutabaga, all mixed together. And it's basically, if you have a plate, you can eat it with a fork and a knife. But if you're traveling, you can pick it up and eat it like a big sandwich. And a lot of the workers in the mines in years gone by would bring them to the mine for lunch, and it travels well. So when I was younger, we used to eat them all the time. My mom would stop at one of the pasty places along US 2 on the way back, and she'd break out a cooler and buy a cooler full of frozen pasties and bring them home. We had a top-loading big storage freezer, and she'd fill it. And all year long, hey, you want a pasty? Go dig one out. Bring it upstairs. Heat it up. So it had pasties year-round from the Upper Peninsula. 90 knots, butter is the best. Yeah. Tiger Strips, is pasty like a meat pie? Yes. And interestingly enough, they're affiliated with or associated with the Finns in most people's minds, but they're from Cornwall. They're Cornish. So the Cornish brought the pasties over where the Finns kind of adopted them, but there were so many people in the Upper Peninsula who ate them, and there's so many Finns up there that it's a natural correlation. But the pasty is simply a Cornish meat pie. And the rutabaga is apparently the thing that gives it the slight twist that makes it what it is. New creature in Christ, I miss Coney dogs from Dog and Suds. Are you talking about the Dog and Suds in Baraga? That's the only one I know about, although I know there are a few others. 90 knots passes the requirement for the Homer Simpson diet. What are you referring to when he's trying to gain weight? When Nick Riviera said if you rub it on paper and the paper becomes translucent, that's your window to weight gain? Or are you just talking about something that Homer Simpson will eat? I'm pretty sure I think he'll eat anything. Dixie Champagne is back after dealing with other people's pesky tech problems. Mark Ewing, what's your favorite comfort food? I'm a boring person when it comes to food. I like pizza, so, but my diet's relatively bland. Song Yardbird says we have a Dog and Suds in Elyria, Ohio. But is Dog and Suds, I always thought that those were A&Ws where people lost the A&W franchise or didn't feel like paying the franchise fees. so they simply just said, it's something else now. BLT9K, we have a Dog and Suds in Grace Lake. Tiger Stripes pizza, the perfect food. Well, and here's the thing: there's good pizza, there's bad pizza, there's fast food pizza. If you're hungry, pizza will almost always fill the bill. But there are some pizzas like you walk into a Little Caesars and flip them $5 and they hand you a pizza they made 10 minutes earlier. That is not exactly gourmet pizza, but like you go to like Buddy's Pizza in Detroit, a sit-down place. Achilles Last Stand asks the question I'm about to answer. Best pizza in Southeast Michigan. I like Buddy's Pizza. Buddy's is a sit-down place that's got very, very good pizza. If you like deep dish, and I might be wrong, there used to be a place called Pizza Popolis, but it was near my old office. I don't know if it's still there or not. Mind Ben says that is cardboard, and I assume he's referring to Little Caesars. Kin Vow, hello, Mr. Leto. Thank you for all the videos you have done. I've learned a lot. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. You may call me Steve. As long as you spell it with a V, I'm happy. I'm joking, of course, because somebody wrote to me earlier, mentioned in a comment a couple days ago about being a Steven with a PH. And I'm Steve with a V. And I say that because I once had a court reporter ask me how I spell my name. And I go, Steve. And she goes, well, no, is it Steven with a V or a PH? I go, it's Steve. She goes, what's in your birth certificate? And I go, I don't have it with me. And she goes, well, what's your legal name? And I go, Steve. And what's weird about it is people think that like you don't have the right to call yourself. I mean, I'm not being deceptive. I'm simply dropping off one letter. But I've never cared for Steven. So Tiger Stripes points out that a Steve with a PH is in fact a Steph. That's the argument. Yeah, little seizures. Daniel Kester. That's what a lot of people called it. Achilles Last Stand Buddies at 6 Mile and Conant. Yeah, there's also one in Northwestern Highway. There's a bunch of them. A bunch of Buddies. Buddies is good. Buddies is good. Fred Stewart, we have 2 A&Ws in our county. Great root beer, but not so good food. You know, it's been a while since I've been to an actual A&W, and I drive by one from time to time, and I'm always tempted to stop, but I'm never hungry enough to stop when I see openings. So it just the universe is conspiring against me. Mindbend. I'm William, but I go by Mindbend. That's the funny thing, you know, someone named William's got a whole bunch of choices, you know, Bill, William, Willem. As long as you pick one and go with it. Songyard, but is Mr. Hot Dog in Michigan still? I am not familiar with any Mr. Hot Dog. Was that a chain or a franchise? Never heard of it. ZKR99, Kentucky Fried Taco Hut or McWendy's King? You know, it's sad. I liked Long John Silver's, but I'll admit I didn't go there for the fish. They had chicken planks, which were actual breaded white meat, but not like chicken tenders or whatever McDonald's. I'm assuming that what McDonald's makes their McNuggets out of started out life as a chicken, but I'm not sure what parts of the chicken they put in the grinder before they make the McNuggets. But Long John Silver's has got these chicken planks, which are big pieces of white meat that are breaded, that are really, really good. And I've always really liked that with the honey mustard sauce. But Long John Silver's are not as common as they used to be. And they peaked, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago. And I think they've got some problems financially. I think they got bought by somebody else. I know at one point in time there was one in Houghton, Michigan. And then at one point in time it was joined together with A&W. I think they had the same parent company or something. And I remember going in there every time I went to Houghton. Oh, yes, I get to go to Long John Silver's today. And I had a friend up there whose name was Ray Carlson. And Ray passed away a couple of years ago. And he was one of my favorite people up there. He did a lot of research for me. And I used to be able to call him up and say, hey, Ray, I need you to run over to the Michigan Tech archives and find a document for me. And he, boom, hour later goes, Steve, I just got it. I just emailed it to you or whatever. And wonderful guy. He knew everybody up there. And so one year I was going up there to visit, and I gave him a call and said, hey, Ray, I'm in town. Let's get together, you know. So we were sitting down in a restaurant talking, and he goes, when did you get up here? I go, I got up here yesterday. And he goes, oh, really? He goes, where'd you eat yesterday? I go, Long John Silver's. And before I could, he goes, you eat that? It was such an honest question. You eat that? So, oh boy, but it was good. Southern Cal Hot Rod. And you got to give me credit for figuring that out because it could be Scal Hot Rod. Great stuff, Steve. I split my time on YouTube between you and the First Amendment auditors. And here's the deal. I talked a while back about First Amendment auditors, maybe a month ago, 2 weeks ago. I got a lot of grief from people going, Steve, you're not being fair to the First Amendment auditors because they all do great work. They don't all do great work. Some of them don't. And it all depends on whether you find the ones who are doing something useful or the ones who are being jerks about it. And so if you poke around, you can find people doing both. And I'm not going to say that all of them are bad or all of them are good. I'm not going to venture a guess as to how many are which. But I'm going to tell you, you can find video of First Amendment auditors who are just being jerks. So, but I'm fascinated by all of it because I love it. I've also seen a cop walk up and gives me a hard time, and they're being filmed. They know they're being filmed, and still being the cop's being a jerk. So, oh. BS, I've not eaten at a Long John's in about 30 years. It's probably been about 5 years. Now, Song Yearnbird says, remember Arthur Treachers? Yes, I do remember Arthur Treachers. And the funny part is we used to call him Arthur Treacherous, only because you could make the name out of Treachers. But they were actually pretty good, too. There was an Arthur Treachers, I believe, on 15 Mile Road or Maple Road in Troy or Clawson. I think I always forget what the south side, I think it's Troy, east of Coolidge, back in the 1970s, 1980s. I remember about that, too. Now, Matthew Shosman says, Steve, what do you think of Swedish banana pizza? I've never heard of that. I don't think bananas belong on pizza, but then again, I know people who don't think pineapple belongs on pizza, and I do think it's okay to have pineapple on pizza. So, Alex Rosenbaum, hi, Steve. I loved Oregon woman claims she is not dead. Does she have a case for slander, considering she can show economic loss as a result? Sadly, probably not. Because in most cases, if you're not a public figure, well, I'm trying to think about how best to say this. It depends on who they told and what steps they took to correct it once they are notified of it. Because if they simply, in other words, the bank tells her, hey, we think you're dead. Well, they didn't slander her to her because it's got to be a third party. So it's when they tell that to a credit reporting agency. But the problem is the courts have consistently ruled that good faith mistakes made by credit reporting agencies and so on are not terribly actionable if they take steps to clean them up. So, but yeah, no, it was a weird case because the bank told her, yeah, we think you're dead. Sorry. She's like, I'm not dead. Do you know? D. Woods' Mr. Hot Dog was also a Saturday morning kids show character on WNEM, Saginaw, Michigan, which would also be Channel 5, WNEM. How long ago? I wonder about, I mean, I believe you. I didn't grow up in that area, so I wouldn't know. I did work briefly at WKNX Saginaw and got to know some of the old-time disc jockeys from the area. But Daniel Kester, slander has to be intent, doesn't it? Well, it's either intent or a reckless disregard for the truth, and it depends on the type of person who's being slandered and so on. But very, very complicated. So Matthew Shosman says, Steve, McDonald's chicken nuggets are 70% celery. Is there any chicken content in there? Tome reader. Ever read the Velodrome at Bloomer Park? No, I have not. I've mountain biked in Bloomer dozens of times, but that's simply the trails over by Bloomer and across the road by the Yates Cider Mill. But I've never been in the Velodrome. There's also a Velodrome in Detroit, too, that I've not been. I've never ridden a bicycle on a Velodrome track. Alex Rosenbaum is trying to conjure up the robot announcer lady, but she has checked out. She was here for a while and she left. She had to go. So Dixie Champagne seconds the motion regarding pineapple on pizza. And, you know, it's kind of weird because a lot of times with pizza, and I got to tell you, it's the combination of things on a pizza. So I've seen some pizzas with certain elements that worked, but they were with other elements. But you can't just take like green peppers, barbecue sauce, pineapples, and squid and put it on a pizza. But you might be able to, you know, one or two of the, you know, so I'm joking about the squid. Retired Butcher Boy says In-N-Out Burgers. You, my friend, are speaking my language. We do not have In-N-Out Burger in Michigan. I wish we did, but we don't. I went to law school in California, and I remember right after I got out there, one of my friends said, "Hey, Steve, have you tried In-N-Out Burger yet?" And I go, "No, why?" And he goes, "Do you like hamburgers?" And I go, "Good ones." And he goes, In-N-Out Burger. And sure enough, In-N-Out Burgers are head and shoulders above all other burger joints out there. I don't care what anybody says. And when I've mentioned this before, I get pushed back. I don't care. When I go to California, there's an In-N-Out Burger, I seem to recall, not far from the airport. First stop, and often the last stop as I leave. But I've got In-N-Out Burger shirts. I wear them from time to time on camera. Fabulous, fabulous burgers and fries, In-N-Out Burger. Love them, love them. Well, Bill 57 says everything's better with bacon. Many things are better with bacon. Many things are. As I mentioned before, somebody said, Steve, if you want to find your camera after it tumbles off your car, you could tie something bright to it, like a bright orange or bright pink ribbon, and that way if it flew off, you'd see it. And somebody else said you could train a dog to sniff for it. And I said, yeah, just wrap it in bacon. Lemsy, did you ever order any off-the-menu special hamburgers at In-N-Out? No, I didn't. I'm happy with a double-double. I don't care. Matthew Shostrom says, Steve, as a former cook for McDonald's, I can confirm that at least 10% of the nugget is chicken meat. I don't know what the remaining 20% is beyond the celery. The question is, can you confirm it's actually chicken meat, or is 10% chicken substance? Because not the entire chicken is meat. Mike Ryan says, Four Guys burgers are good, but the peanut oil fries suck. I'll agree with you. Four Guys burgers are good also. They're not In-N-Out quality, but they're close. They're close. We've got those in Michigan. And I can also tell you that for those three of you in the audience who go to the Upper Peninsula from time to time, if you cross the Mackinac Bridge, hang left on US 2, go over to Nobbin Way. There is a small independent restaurant there called Moo Fin Fries. Moo Fin Fries. MOOFINFRIES. And it's a guy who bought a building, put a restaurant in, and it has fantastic food. Top of the line burgers. The guy makes the fries from the potatoes. You can watch them do it. Guy takes a potato, sticks it in a thing, goes thunk, and it spits out the fries straight in the fryer, and they're on your table 10 minutes later. And they have fish, hamburgers, and fries. And the guy's got it down to a science. I've been in there 2 or 3 times. Every time I stop there, the owner comes out, is walking around, checking on people. Hey, everything good? How you guys doing? And the third time I was there, I struck up a conversation with him. I'm like, dude, I got to tell you, I'm from Lower Peninsula. Stop by your one time, was so impressed. Every time I go by, I've got to stop. And the guy goes, I appreciate that. I said, but you're doing it right, And he goes, that's my whole theory. He goes, I have suppliers come in here who ask me if they want, do I want to change suppliers? I can save money by buying frozen fries. I can save a fortune. I can save money by buying a lower grade hamburger. I can save money. And he goes, no, I'm not interested in saving money. The interest is making good food. And businesses, especially big corporate businesses, are often so focused on the bottom line that they lose track of what the business is. People won't walk in the front door and bring their money unless you give them a reason to. And they won't come back a second time if they had a bad experience the first time. So what you got to do is have good service or good products or both. And this guy, he's got it down. I mean, the place is clean. The place is nice looking. It's roomy and great service. The guy's all 3 times the owner walks by. Hey, how you doing? Everything okay? Everything. And so it was so interesting to be talking to the guy about that, because he said, no, I've got people, guys come in here. Hey, I can save you a boatload of money. You can be making this much more money every load of fries. The guy's like, not interested. And there's something really, really cool about watching the guy. And I apologize, Adrian Davis is pointing out that there's some steps involved in making fries. I don't know the steps. All I know is they've got the machine right there. It's a hand operated thing. You put a potato in it, you go thunk, and it spits out the fries. Fries immediately get whatever you do with them, and they're on your table a few minutes later. And so that's, the guy's doing it right. Mark Heil points out that there is an In-N-Out secret menu that is not that secret. I know there's actually a bunch of articles written about, the secret things you can order at restaurants, and In-N-Out's always there. But something, the restaurants there, or the menu's there for a reason also. They figured out what sells, and so they'll give you what you want. Now, Chuckster 255 says, Steve, if and when you visit Southern California, you have to try Slater's 50-50 burger. It's 50% ground beef and 50% ground bacon. I have to admit, I'm intrigued. Oh, Tony Bologna says, Steve, is it necessary to stop exactly at the stop sign, or is it acceptable if you're a few feet behind it? Well, here's the problem. Okay, stop sign is here. If you took geometry in elementary school or middle school, you know that a line has no thickness. So the stop sign is right here, but turned sideways. Even if you had a line coming up from the stop sign, you could get within, millionths of an inch of it, but not be there. And of course, once you're there, you're actually on the other side of it to some degree because the line's not real. And so there's always going to be a debate about how close you get to the stop sign before you go. So I think that it's going to be more a matter of common sense, because I think most statutes, it's been a while since I've looked at them, I think most statutes are going to say something to the effect of that you have to stop at the sign, implying that you're there. Okay. So the stop sign is here. If you were to draw the line out, you'd stop there. But is that a foot away? You're probably fine. 3 feet away? Probably fine. A car length back? No. And so the bigger problem you have in situations like this is I've had people tell me that they've stopped at a stop sign and then went, and a cop goes, no, you rolled the stop sign. And unless somebody's got film of it, it's your word against theirs, you're going to lose. So Mr. R seconds the Slater's recommendation. And Margaret Chase appears to agree that 50% beef and 50% bacon does sound good. Mike Bennett, who remembers the McDonald's promotion back around 1979 or 80? For a few weeks, they sold burgers for 15 cents, cheeseburgers for a quarter, and Big Macs for 50. I don't remember that, but my family wasn't really big into fast food when I was growing up. It wasn't until much later. But if you're interested in business history, there are some good books written about both Coca-Cola and McDonald's. And there's also the movie they made with Michael Keaton about McDonald's, which is pretty good. I've seen some documentaries as well. The McDonald's franchise, especially the beginning, was pure genius, the way they did that. So Amateur Shooter points out, if you keep taking a step halfway to the wall, and it's exactly half, you will never get there. Yes, and that's the old Zeno's paradox. My friend Thomas Spade would be so proud of me for remembering that. Guy Lee says, hi, Steve, checking in from Lindenwold, New Jersey, or Lindenwald. Thank you. Thank you for the pronouncer. I appreciate that. Stephen Holt says, double fried fresh fries. I remember when Burger King first put out their reformulated French fries. It's at the early 90s, 94, 95, right around there. And at first I liked them, and not so much anymore. So, Amateur Shooter says, I was a math teacher in a past life. What level of math did you teach? Douglas Brown, parallel lines meet at infinity. Prove it. Southern Cal Hot Rod says, I miss when McDonald's had bags of burgers as an actual menu item. I don't remember that. Is that a long time ago? Sounds more like something like White Castle somebody would do. Amateur shooters says he taught college and high school math. Oh, that's the good stuff. JP says back in Canada as a teenager, McDonald's had the McPizza, and out in the Atlantic provinces, they had the McLobster roll. Now, here's the thing. McDonald's is famous for trying weird things like that. And I remember them experimenting regionally with pizza in America, but I don't know if they ever did it in the Midwest. I can't remember where they rolled it out. I'd heard that there was McPizza. I just don't remember what parts of the country, and it didn't catch on. So I know they got rid of that. So 90 knots. Haven't eaten at McDonald's in years. I've eaten there from time to time. It's almost always on the road. I'm driving around. You're driving through some town. You don't have time to stop other than just to grab something. And then the question always is, you know something, at least you know what you're going to get. That's the one thing about McDonald's, is that McDonald's has consistency from store to store. So if you get French fries McDonald's in St. Ignace, Michigan, they're identical to the French fries you get in London, England. And that's just the way they do it. And they do it for a reason. So Mike Lackner, 2 a.m. White Castle was the best, worst of my 20s. I think that transitioned into a 2 a.m. Taco Bell. 90 knots, never eaten a White Castle. I have, but probably not in 30 years. Never cared for it. It's just not really too crazy about it. Mike Bennett ate at McDonald's in the Philippines. Now, did they have a weird menu items? They must have, right? 2000 MCR, don't sweat the petty things and don't pet the sweaty things. Sarah Callahan, in Japan, McDonald's has corn soup. Yeah, because probably to them, corn is an exotic import. It's not me 07. Yes, 2 a.m. Taco Bell, dinner or breakfast of college students. And the great thing about Taco Bell, I've said this before, Taco Bell has got 2 or 3 things going for it. One of which is that they can take somebody off the street who's never worked in a workplace before, give them a trowel, and have them making menu items within like 3 minutes. It's like, oh, a number 1 is that in one of these. Number 2 is some of that in one of those. A number 3 is this and this in that. And number 4 is this and this in that. And they have a trowel, like, you know, just like you spread cement with. The other thing about Taco Bell, it's all the same. The only difference is whether it's wrapped in something soft or crunchy. Other than that, it's all the same. And Adam Alexander, who's an attorney I've done a couple of videos with talking about credit repair and so on. And I hope to get him back in here now that I've got a set where I can bring 2 chairs and move into the 21st century. He and I worked together for years. And he'd call me and go, hey, Steve, I'm running by Taco Bell. You want me to get you something? I would just say yes. Didn't matter because it's all the same. And he'd literally walk into the bag, go, I got you $5 for the Taco Bell, and drop it on my desk and walk out. And I wouldn't be surprised if at the window he just goes, yeah, give me $10 of Taco Bell. I don't care. It's all the same. So Mike Ryan, Taco Bell filling technically cannot be called meat. Probably not, but like I said, it's installed with a trowel. Watch the thing they're using back behind the counter, and it looks like a trowel, and the slop, for lack of a better word, comes out of it, looks like a trough. Towel. You're new hire? What? I'm gonna teach you to make this, okay? Grab the trowel, scoop some of that out of the trough, and slop it on there. Roll it up, paper, boom, there you go. You're hired. Oh. Rolling back. Duncan Campbell, Australia has the fried apple pie. We've got apple pies here too that I think are very similar to that. I'm not sure how different that would be. Old guy says German McDonald's are better than the US. Better coffee, better burgers, better ice cream. I'd be curious about the coffee. And I'm not kidding, because they did marketing studies on this. And if you can get someone to like your coffee, they'll make that become the thing that they try to keep consistent. And so if they have coffee that works, they're going to stick with it. And so the question is, what would be different about the coffee in Germany? Would the market be that different for people in Germany to want coffee different than the coffee in America? So SD back out says, in 1980, I was living in the Canary Islands, but around that time, Kentucky Fried Chicken was the first fast food on the island. And their popular item then was a hamburger. Hey, you got the market all to yourself. Why not? Why not? Oh, Ram 50 V8 McDonald's fried cherry pie was my favorite. Yeah, I never got into the pies from McDonald's. I know people were really into them, but McDonald's will take a food item and figure out how can we make it inexpensively, still taste okay, and make it travel well. And so they'd make the pies so they're self-contained and they fit inside that cardboard container. And it just never struck me as a pie. I mean, I understand theoretically it kind of is. And same with the hash brown, right? The hash browns, McDonald's, they come in a little envelope and you can eat it like that. I mean, technically, it has a lot in common with hash browns. Not really. But, I understand that the world of the universe they're working in requires these kinds of fixes. So, J. Paul says, not getting your notices anymore. Don't know why. Just keep dinging that bell, my friend, because you're the one who spots the hundo all the time. Oh, boy. Dave Beto says, when does a citizen's arrest cross the line and become kidnapping? I did a video on citizens' arrests, and citizens' arrests are one of those things where that you, as a citizen, in some circumstances, in some states, have the right to actually arrest somebody. Okay? So in Michigan, for instance, if I saw somebody commit a felony right in front of me, and I felt like it and had the wherewithal to do so, I could arrest that person, call the police, and go, I've arrested this person, I'm holding him for you. Every attorney on earth will tell you, never try it, never do it. If you want to get involved, pay attention, become a good witness, and call the cops. Let them arrest the person. Because the problem is, if you mistakenly arrest somebody, or you injure them in the process of the arrest, or you do anything wrong, you're going to get sued. And you don't have immunity the way the cops do. So I would never recommend it. And I've told this story. It's absolutely true, but I like to tell a story because it's funny. Years ago, I was doing jury selection for a trial in Macomb County, Michigan. And we got juror questionnaires that the jurors had filled out in advance. So we could flip through them and learn some of the basic stuff about the jurors without asking the questions. And one of the questions was, have you ever been arrested? Which is a yes or no. And some guy wrote, no, but I once arrested someone after a traffic incident. And he said, citizen's arrest. And me and the other attorney are looking at it going, what? And we're trying to think of what the situation would be where you could perform a citizen's arrest on somebody after a traffic incident and make it stick. And then we just realized, okay, this is probably not somebody anybody wants in the jury. So we're not sure what planet or what realm they're living in. So, Adderfellis? What about a strawberry rhubarb pie? That sounds good. Probably more likely a homemade though, right? New creature in crisis. In Georgia, you can only do citizen's arrest if you witness a forcible felony. Many states will say that. That if you witness a violent felony, or depends on how they phrase it. But the problem is that most people don't know the difference between a felony and a misdemeanor or a traffic incident. But I assure you that when the person you arrested lawyers up, you're going to be sorry you got involved. So, Matthew Joseph says, Stephen, I'm going to let you in on a secret. The ice creams are almost never broken. No, there was an article about that on the news last week, and that's widely believed that the ice cream machines at McDonald's are so difficult to reload that most workers don't want to do it, and they'd rather leave it for the person on the next shift. So when the machines run out or stop working, they slap a broken sign on it and tell people, yeah, it's broken. It's broken. When in reality, all they get is refill it. So Peter Mannix has named one other way that rhubarb is good, implying that rhubarb in a pie, like you mentioned a moment ago, makes sense. There's a few things like that. There are a few food items that are pretty much only good in one setting. J. Paul, does anyone eat cheesecake anymore? I love it. Of course. Cheesecake Factory. Got a whole place devoted to it. Now, several people are pointing out this rhubarb jam. Song Yardbird, Douglas Brown, D. McGee. I've never actually had rhubarb jam, although I've had thimbleberry jam, which I like very, very much. Of course, that grows in the Upper Peninsula. And Matthew Shostrom says that he's talking about the ice cream stuff from personal experience because he was one of the few people who'd actually go to the trouble of refilling the machine instead of saying it was broken. JP says, have you ever seen the YouTube channel Will It Soft Serve, where he runs all kinds of foods into a soft serve ice cream machine, which is pretty funny? I have not seen that one. I've seen the drill press guy. There's a guy with or not drill press, but the guy who's got the hydraulic press and he crushes stuff just to show you what it looks like when you crush something. It can get pretty interesting. So, Lemsia, I would live in a cheesecake factory if I could. Yeah. And it's been a few years since I've been to one, but I used to go quite often. There was one closer to where I had an office for a little while there. New Creature in Christ points out that they're often crowded. And of course, they're crowded because the food and service are both good. Daniel Kester says that the milkshake machines at Burger King are often that problem, that they don't reload them and to say they're broken. And by the way, that is a corporate problem they have to deal with, because if they've got machines on locations in franchises that could be generating money, that workers are saying this machine's broken rather than using it, that is a problem. So I wouldn't be surprised right now if there's a team of people at McDonald's headquarters, pointing the wrong way, I think it's actually that way, at McDonald's headquarters, trying to figure out how to solve that problem. And I guarantee they're working on it. By the way, I have to tell you, it's one of my favorite Star Trek jokes. I'm not a huge Star Trek fan, but there's an episode of Star Trek where the captain and Spock and Bones, 4 or 5 people are in the conference room, as if a spaceship would have a conference room. But they're in the conference room, and Kirk goes, well, back on Earth. And Spock goes, Earth is that way. Oh, boy. So. Ram 50 V8 says hydraulic press guy also does explosives under frozen lakes. I have not seen that. I will have to take a look. You know, that's the great thing about the internet and YouTube. You can find pretty much anything there. Several people are talking about shepherd's pie, and I'm not even sure what shepherd's pie is. I've seen it on a menu before, but I've never had it. Mike Bennett says, I had a friend who worked at a restaurant where if guests did not eat their vegetables, the restaurant would reserve them to new guests. I kid you not. I believe that. There's a famous restaurant in Michigan a few years back that had a controversy that arose because they had an all-you-can-eat dinner of sorts. And the problem with all-you-can-eat dinners is people put too much stuff on their plates, and they often put stuff that they're not going to eat. And so what happens is they'd be throwing away perfectly good food. Well, it's not perfectly good because it was on someone else's plate. And they were quietly putting it back out. And one of the workers there went to the local TV station and said, yeah, that all-you-can-eat deal at that one restaurant might get you some used food. And it was not good. So got to be careful about that. Douglas Brown says that the shepherd's pie is like a meat pie, but instead of a crust, they cover it with mashed potatoes. Oh, I've seen that before. I just didn't know what it was called. I did not know that. Scuba Stevie says Bonneterre, Missouri has an underground mine you can dive in. Mine closed and flooded. All the equipment was left behind. There's mines like that in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. There's the Delaware Mine, there's a copper mine, and it was abandoned and flooded up. I forget how many levels up it flooded, and divers have gone down into it. And it's a scary proposition because if you got lost down there, you'd be in a lot of trouble. But also there's so much silt down there because the water doesn't circulate. So I guess as you go deeper in the water, it gets warmer because believe it or not, you're going closer to the center of the earth. But I've talked to guys who've gone diving in there, and you can find video of that as well, diving the Delaware Mine. But it's a whole different world diving in a abandoned mine. So, Mike Lackner, does anyone else enjoy watching curling? I do from time to time, but I still don't understand it. Someday I need to sit down with some Canadians and watch it. But what's cool about curling is I understand it's a sport, but it's a sport dominated by people who look like librarians. They're dressed like librarians. I mean, they're wearing, khakis and windbreakers, and a lot of the women have nice hair and makeup and jewelry on. Curling. So any sport that can be dominated by people who are dressed and look like librarians, to me, it's pretty cool. JP says that curling is shuffleboard on ice. And I understand that. It's just I've watched it before and it's like, So Kin Vow says, sorry if this is a dumb or pointless question, but no, it's not. Are the mines intentionally flooded, or is it just a thing that happens? It's a thing that happens when you ignore them. So the Calumet Hecla mine, for instance, at one point in time, had a shaft that went down more than a mile, like 7,000 feet down. Okay. So they dig down a shaft, and then they dig horizontal shafts like every 10 or 15 feet. And there's another shaft like this. So they get down 60 or 70 levels. And as you go down deeper and deeper into the earth, number one, water starts leaking into the mines from the sides. But number two, water just comes in through the top. And so most working mines have got to have pumping systems that pump the water out of the mine up to the surface. And the deeper you go, the harder it is because you got to pump the water farther. And so they will actually have these mines that are that deep, and they're running the pumps constantly to keep the mines dry. And so when the Calumet Hecla mine was closed, like in 1968, for instance, they closed the mine and they pulled the people out, they pulled the equipment out, and the mine just very, very naturally just flooded. And the Delaware mine is an interesting mine because it goes into the side of a hill. So if you're driving up the middle of the peninsula, the Keweenaw Peninsula, north of Calumet, you'll see a sign that says Delaware Mine. And somebody had found a copper vein on the side of a hill, and they dug it in this way. And then after they dug in sideways, they realized that the vein went down. So they tunneled after the vein, and they wound up going down, 50, maybe 100 feet. I don't know, maybe a couple hundred feet. But what happened is later, when the mine ran out of copper, They just walked out and left it and walked away from it. And so the guy who bought the mine, I don't know if he still owns it, but it was a guy named Tom. I knew him for a while. When he bought the mine, it was flooded up to ground level outside, but it didn't flood above that, obviously. And so he gives tours in the mine of that area that's not flooded of the mine. But that's also the oldest part of the mine. So it's actually pretty cool to see. But the same is kind of true of the Quincy Mine. If you go to Hancock, the Quincy Mine's up on top of Quincy Hill. But to enter the mine, you take a tram down the side and you enter it down here. And when you enter down here, you're at a level that it can't flood above because the ground out here is this high. So you're walking around, but there's holes in the ground that are filled with water right up at the top. And they'll tell you, look, that hole right there goes down 1,000 feet. And it's filled with water all the way down. So it's a real weird, strange world because they dug all these tunnels down there and the tunnels gradually filled with water. So try fingers, the deeper you go down, the warmer the water gets. Yes, especially in a mine, obviously. Zach DeMundo enjoyed the drive. Thanks, Steve. Thank you. Mike Ryan says the Canadian robot lady is back. Did I miss that? Oh, there she is. Canadian robot lady says there's been a curling rink in every town she's lived in. The only one I'm familiar with is there is one in Calumet, Michigan. And I made the mistake of trying to change this. Kin Vow, I see. Thanks for the lesson. Oh, you're welcome. And like I said, there's no such thing as a stupid question. I know a lot about the copper mines. Among other things, I've got the copper behind me. This is copper from the Calumet and Heckle mine, for instance. And that's one of the mines I just mentioned. I know a lot about them. I've written about them quite a bit. So, why do the ingots have the same odd shape? That one there is lead. I won't touch that. But they all generally have these notches in them because they have molds. And they pour the copper into a mold like they pour it into the mold and they got to pull it out. There's something about putting a notch that makes it, I guess, easier to pull it out. And then they take them, they stack them. So it's industry standard. I'm guessing it makes them easier to mold. It might make them easier to stack. But copper industry in America was centered in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan between like 1880 and 1920. And then it started tailing off. And then out west, it became a much, much bigger deal. So this little itty bitty pity show, can you help me with a quick pointer on serving someone? I assume you don't mean like a cookbook, but you mean like serving somebody legal process. I would need to know more about the question to give you an answer, but I can tell you that generally speaking, if you're involved in a lawsuit, if you are one of the parties, you cannot serve documents in that case because you're presumed to have an interest in it such that you might be tempted to cheat. So you may need to hire a process server. Your best bet is always ask the court what they prefer. Some courts will tell you, give it to us. We'll give it to a deputy who will serve it and charge you. Or they'll say you can use anybody who is a licensed, or not a licensed, but a process server as long as they're not related to you or something. So the little itty bitty pity show says, it's my friend serving his neighbor. But is your friend a party to the case for which they are being served? Because if your friend is a party, they might not be allowed to. This will vary state by state. So again, I don't want to give legal advice outside of the state of Michigan, but your best bet is to find out what court issued the summons, if that's what it is, or the notice to appear, or whatever the document is, and ask them. A lot of times, the documents will say right on them who can serve them. So if you're in California and your friend is serving the documents, the question is, what is your friend's relationship to the case? Is your friend a party or not? If they're a party, they might not be able to serve the documents. If they aren't a party, they might be able to serve the documents if they are, in fact, an adult. So that's the best I can tell you on that. Anyways, we've been here for an hour 35. So I'm going to wrap it up now. I'm starting to lose my voice, and I'm all out of Gatorade, as someone else noted. I will talk to you again next week, same time, same place. And, of course, I'll be putting up 2 videos a day between now and then. So until then, behave yourself. Bye-bye.